Okay, I think we'll kick things off. We've got a jam-packed schedule this evening, so we'll get the ball rolling. So thank you ever so much for joining us for the May edition of Tech Wednesday. If you're joining us for the very first time, thank you. I've seen lots of new names coming through on the registration list, so it's lovely to always have some new faces. So Tech Wednesday is a monthly meetup. We meet on the third Wednesday of every month. Usually we are in person. We're getting very used to this virtual world, but hopefully we will be back there soon with beers and pizzas with open arms now that we're allowed to hug cautiously. And yeah, we'll see you very soon. Throughout the evening, if you'd like to get the conversation online or shout about the speakers that we have this evening, please do use the hashtag TechWeds. It'll help keep everything together, and we'll be able to see it all in one place. I'm really excited this evening. We've been looking forward to it for a couple of months now. We have a Tech Nation Tech Wednesday takeover. So many techs, tech in your face, we're going for it. And I'm really excited this evening to have a lovely bunch of people who are going to give us some inspirational talks and talk us through their journeys. I'm very shortly going to hand over to Naomi, who some of you may recognise if you've been with Tech Nation for Tech Wednesday for a long time. Naomi is the Entrepreneur Engagement Manager for the Midlands. And she will shortly tell you all about Tech Nation, what they've got going on and the programmes that they're running at the minute, which you could be a part of. We've also got 3 lovely companies joining us who are on the Tech Nation programmes. So I'm not going to dive too much into it. I'm going to let Naomi talk about them in a bit more depth as we go through, but really great to have you. Thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. That's me. My hand's done. Naomi, if you'd like to talk us through Tech Nation and around what you guys are doing at the minute.
Brilliant, thanks Steph. Hi everyone, good to be back. Can't wait to see everyone in person. Can I share my screen, Steph? Will it just...
Should be able to, or I've got the next slide. This one, if you want.
that's one, thank you. So I could talk all day. I actually do like full blown like an hour talk about all the stuff that Tech Nation does, but I'm going to try and keep this really tight and succinct. So Tech Nation is a government funded support program for tech scale ups across the whole of the UK and now international. This week we announced we've got our first international team in the APAC region, so that's really exciting. And with the way we support the tech businesses through a number of different things. Primarily, I'm going to talk today about our growth programs, of which both Sarah and Michael have been on, and hopefully Asha will be on our next cohort of them coming up. I just want to take this opportunity to talk you through the 6 that are currently open for applications. So those first 3 on the left there, we've got Net Zero in its 2nd year, FinTech coming into its 4th year, and Applied AI going into its 3rd year. They are our sector programs. So this is for companies who are at stage kind of pre-seed, pre-Series A, or you're looking to raise your Series A, that kind of stage. You maybe you've got about 10 employees, 15 employees, or if you are more revenue focused, you are making no more than 1.5 million in revenues per year. The Net Zero programme is all about helping the government to reach the government target of the UK being net zero by 2050. So if you're developing technology solution that helps in any way towards that goal, and you're in that stage of business, then you can apply. FinTech is, as it says on the tin, it's financial technology. So if you're doing something in that area, also including insure tech this year as well, because that's quite a hot topic at the moment. And Applied AI is for companies who are using artificial intelligence or machine learning as their core technology within their business. So essentially, if you remove the artificial intelligence from the business, there's no business. So that's, people that are really using that technology as part of their solution. Really excited about Libra, which is brand new this year. We did a lot of research into inclusivity and underrepresented founders this last year. And so Libra has been born out of those conversations, and each year we're going to focus on a different group of underrepresented founders. So female founders, as we know, especially in the tech industry, underrepresented, neurodiverse or ability founders as well. But this year we're focusing on Black founders. So this edition of Libra is for the Black founder experience, and helping them overcome the challenges specifically to their group. But they're also going to be able to join in with the sector programs if they're interested in those as well. So that's exciting. Excuse me. So Upscale is our next stage of business. So this is for slightly later stage businesses, but it's across the whole of the tech sector. So it doesn't have to be fintech or edtech, or it can be any tech solution. And this is really a creme de la creme of a program for those companies that have just raised maybe their Series A, or they're having revenues of about 3 million and they're looking to really scale at a fast pace, looking to expand their team quickly for the first time, and giving them all the help and support that they need to be able to do that successfully with a really trusted group of people. We're in our 7th year of this now, and I know that like the founders that were on the first cohort and the second cohort are still, have WhatsApp groups, and they're still in talks with each other. So it's a really great way to meet people that you wouldn't necessarily meet who are having the same challenges. And finally, Future 50. This is for your super fast growing tech businesses in the UK. So the likes of Hopin, who have just scaled massively over the last year, they kind of be considered. But it's essentially for any company that is, again, scaling really fast. Revenues do need to be over 5 million a year, and growing at around 50% year on year. So we've got a couple of those. We actually do have a couple of those in the Midlands region, which is really exciting. So hopefully we'll see some coming on to that. That's the programs in a nutshell, and I've got all loads of extra information on these, like more about the criteria, what's involved in the programs, that Steph's got that she can share with you all afterwards. And you can obviously get in touch with me if you want any help or support, or got any questions for any of them, or if you want to have a chat about anything else. To be honest, I get the lucky job of being paid to listen to companies and help in any way I can. So please do get in touch with me. It'd be great to catch up. And that's all I've got to say as well. So I'm really grateful to have our speakers with us today. I pulled on my network of entrepreneur engagement managers across the UK. So we've got Asha here from Birmingham, Sarah's calling in from Norwich, and we've got Michael up in Liverpool. So truly is a national event today. So first up, we're going to head to Dr. Asha Patel, who's based in Birmingham, and I had a really good chat with Asha a few weeks ago about her business, Innovating Minds. Asha is a registered clinical psychologist and has founded Innovating Minds to better the education of teachers and their support networks to help with the mental health of children in schools, and is developing an online platform called EduPod. And I invite Asha to come and tell us her story.
Thank you. So I'll just start off with my why. So before Innovating Minds, I'm trained as a clinical psychologist, and I used to work with high-profile murderers and sex offenders in medium secure services, so in prisons and healthcare settings. And my caseload was about 15 patients, and every week I'd see them and support them. And what I quickly realised were a lot of their journeys and their stories were about early childhood difficulties, and how that had led to them experiencing severe mental health difficulties, but also commit very serious crimes. So I wanted to work at the other end of the spectrum, So I used my clinical knowledge and the work that we did in healthcare settings to apply to educational settings. And that's how the idea came to me, was literally, it was to see if one model would transfer into another setting. So I set off and won a first contract in London. So it was just me on my own for about the first 18 months, I'd say. And I worked in a school and it was basically a dumping ground for children. It was children that were excluded from mainstream education, but they had social, emotional, mental health difficulties. And on my first day that I stepped into that school, no lie, I actually felt safer working with my sex offenders and murderers than being in that school. So it was a really challenging school. It had been failing for a long time. And there was a new senior leadership team that I came in. They'd been at it for about 18 months, trying everything, and nothing would work. And one of the students that they were concerned about was one of the students that all the staff wanted to give this student detention. And what happened was this student had completed suicide. And the senior leadership team had recognised that actually we need to change something, but didn't know how. So I started working with the school senior leadership team, making recommendations of how we can change systemically. So what we can do to the policies and the procedures and the language, etc., and see what would happen. And it was a risk. It was an idea. It was kind of basically, this is what we do in healthcare settings. And within an academic year, we managed to turn the school around. We reduced behaviour incidences by 90%. Ofsted came in and gave it good across the board, and children were now engaging in their learning as well as their mental health being supported. Quite quickly then what happened was I couldn't meet demand, so I couldn't recruit enough people, and also as a social enterprise what we do is reinvest our surplus income into supporting children impacted by domestic abuse. So our programme in schools and our support for children impacted by domestic abuse, we could no longer meet demand in delivering it using a face-to-face service. So in 2019, we decided to digitalise our service and start this digital transformation. Had no prior experience whatsoever in tech. Never thought it would be something that we would be able to do with our service because it's a specialist service. And I remember sitting down on my birthday and making this choice. I was sat with a list of pros and cons of, do we digitalise or do we just continue ticking along as we were, because we were successful as we were. And what we decided to do was digitalise alongside us, continue to deliver face-to-face. And that was more of a financial reason to make sure the business remained stable and people kept their jobs. And we started this digital transformation. And EduPod was built, and it was literally an idea inside of my head taken out into a platform. And one of my top tips would be prepared for the market. It did feel like I was buying a car from a dodgy sales team. So finding a developer that you can trust and understand your vision. So just to give you an idea, my quotes within a matter of 2 weeks range from something like £5,000 to £150,000 for a platform to be developed. We launched EduPod pre-pandemic. It was February, and before EduPod, we could only work with about 15 schools a year. Since EduPod launched in February 2020, we now work with 120 schools. And what happened during the pandemic was we also transformed our Healing Together programme to support children impacted by domestic abuse. So with the increase in domestic abuse with the pandemic and also the crisis before the pandemic, more children were being impacted. There was nowhere for them to access help. So we also digitalised that service, whereby we train now people nationally, so victim support services, people in schools, social workers, we've trained the police, and now able to offer our programme with children, a 6 weeks programme. So children are accessing early help and being able to engage and stay within school, for example. So our digital transformation has actually been built upon us being able to scale our impact. So it's also made it more affordable for people to purchase our services as well. So it's been a journey. We're still on that journey. Our team are not used to digitalized approach. So we're still taking the team through that journey of actually how we've changed our infrastructure. So yeah, so this is where we currently are, and now we've taken it to market. It's been successful, so now we're scaling in terms of revenue and the number of people that we can reach.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I've heard your story, Asha, previously on a couple of other calls, and every time it's kind of, you know, it's wow. So thank you ever so much for sharing that with us this evening. I have just popped a note in the chat box. So I failed to mention at the beginning, if you do have any questions, of course, please do pop them in there and we will ask our speakers as we go on throughout. So if anybody does have any questions for Asha, then please pop them in now, and then we'll get those done just now. It was nice and timely. Well done, Asha. Gold star for you. I'll give that a minute just to see if anybody does that.
I have a quick question. I'm interested in what your pros and cons list looked like when you were deciding to go digital. Obviously, the pros must have outweighed the cons, or maybe not. You just decided to go for it.
Yes. So the pros were about. I hated recruitment. I still hate recruitment. It's hard, it's a long process, and actually psychologists are very difficult people to manage, believe it or not. So that was kind of a pro of that. I'd need less staff. And one thing I would say is sometimes you get judged on how many staff you employ, and it becomes a sign of success. Where actually, since digitalizing, we've reduced our staff and increased turnover and profit. So don't always assume that is a factor. One of the cons were about, would we lose any clinical expertise? Would we dilute what we'd be able to offer and how people would receive it? So that was something that we had to take into consideration when we was developing the content around how we could maintain professional integrity, because that's what makes us unique. So there was the two biggest on those sides. A big con as well was that I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And actually, when I look back and reflect on it, it's actually basically project management. You're kind of pulling strings and setting up teams and making one thing happen after the next, and you being in the center to manage that. So I think I was contemplating it probably about 12 months before, but didn't have the confidence or the know-how of where to start. And I got on the National Express programme. And actually it was nothing near to what we delivered, but that learning from those workshops enabled me to implement that into creating EduPod. So that's another thing to think about, is how can you up your skills, maybe in some, it doesn't need to be in the same sector, that you can transfer learning over. So by doing that, we actually saved a lot of money on things like prototype and stuff, because I could do that myself, because I've had the idea of what I wanted it to look like.
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. I love I love it when I hear founders say, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I hear that more often than not. I think it takes a special kind of someone to launch into something so scary. So yeah, on about incubators and accelerators, if anybody's looking for that kind of support, again, get in touch. I can signpost you. Obviously, Bruntwood SciTech have got a ton of support available across the UK and at Innovation Birmingham, and there are loads of other support as well, so do research and reach out.
Yeah, I'm just going to unmute John, if that's okay. He's raised his hand, so I don't want to miss in case he's got a question. John, hopefully you should be able to unmute yourself. Fingers crossed.
I think I keep getting muted.
Ah, then we can hear you now.
Okay, fine. A personal question, if I can, and you don't have to answer it, or even if you answer it to the nearest 5, that's fine. You told us that you sat down on your birthday, and there's a sense that, in essence, what you've done is you've brought digitization to considerable competence and knowledge. And often tech startups are perceived to be young people that have got a great idea that just spin it out and make it happen. It's clear that what you've done from your description is you've actually got an absolutely huge wealth of knowledge, and you've specifically gone towards the digitization of your knowledge. I just wondered how age basically impacted your thoughts on that, if you wouldn't mind sharing it.
Yes, so age has always been a difficult thing for me because I've always, I guess, I don't know where it's come from, but each year I kind of reflect and see what have I achieved. And generally that's when a lot of my big moves happen. Either I'm coming to my birthday and I think, oh crap, I've not done very much. Or so I'm thinking I need to get this in before my next birthday. So I was 28 when I set up Innovating Minds. So it's probably around about my 31st birthday that I decided to go through the digital transformation. It wasn't really about my age. I think it was more about the day, because this decision was lingering and I just felt like I needed to make it go one way or the other, and the team could feel like this decision was lingering and we didn't know which direction we was going in as well. So it was more that it was just a day that I kind of do a lot of reflection on anyway on the year, and tend to make some bold moves just because of age is creeping up. But age for me, one thing, when I started Innovating Minds, I was 28 and people felt like I was young. And what do you know? But actually, from the age of 12, I've been in business. So my parents have business, and I've run when my parents went on holiday, I was probably managing people twice as old as me as an Asian female in a particularly male dominated industry. So I'd learned quite a lot quite early on. And I was used to handling large amounts of cash and money and stuff like that. And my dad was one of those, he still is actually, of doesn't do things by the book. So I've also, because it's too tight to get solicitors and stuff, I've represented him in court and things like that. So it wasn't more about my age, it was more around, okay, I'm a bit bored now because things are steady at Innovating Minds and we win contracts. We generally win our contracts in the first few months for the year for the rest of the year. So I come to a bit of a point where I was bored as well. So it was a decision to either take a risk and go back a little bit, which I think what happens is when you digitalize, it felt like I was a startup again, even though we wasn't, but that whole new process took us back, and because we changed our business model and it was no longer contracting, it was a licensing based model. So yeah, so there's lots of different factors, but it wasn't age specific. I think I was bored, I was looking for a challenge, and technology was the only way that I could scale what we wanted to do.
Well, thank you for your very candid and helpful answer. It said a lot. Thank you.
Lovely, and thank you for your question, John. I think, many people have had a lot of time on their hands over the last 18 months or so. And I think, like you say, we've kind of been bored, and maybe that this whole lockdown has given the people the confidence to start up something new or to act upon something that they've been sitting on for a long time. So thank you ever so much for being honest and sharing your story, because it's I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with it. Thank you ever so much, Asha. Naomi, if you want to
yeah, thanks. I was just going to say on the age thing, back to you, John, was having worked with tech startups for quite a while now, you do see people from all ages, and the ones that are more likely to succeed tend to be the older ones, the people that have got the industry knowledge and have got the expertise, have got the network, and then they can, and they know that there is a real problem within their industry that needs solving, and they've managed to think of a solution. The young enthusiastic tech startups with their ping pong tables that we like to see on shows and stuff, yeah, they do exist and they are successful as well. But I think it comes from a very different place, and it's their energy and enthusiasm that gets them through, rather than necessarily their plethora of knowledge in the industry. So it's my 2 cents anyway. So yes, thank you, Asha. Let's move on now to Michael. So thank you, Michael, joining us from Liverpool, up near my brother and sister-in-law. So again, you were in the education system. You're a teacher and senior leader for a long time, and obviously again had that industry knowledge, and then decided to digitalize and help solve a problem within that sector with SupplWell. So I'll leave you to explain a little bit more. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was really interesting actually listening to what you were saying, because a lot of it was just, I could resonate with so much of it. And there was a few things I picked up on. One of them in particular, when you said you went into that school. We work with a lot of pupil referral units as well, with children who are hard to reach, or perhaps maybe have SEND or SEMH, or lots of different kind of other complex needs. And a friend of mine who we work with is ex-forces, and he's worked in a number of these schools, and he ran me one day and said, I've been in war zones and I've been shot at, and he said I felt safer there than I did in some of those environments. And that's, it's anecdotal, but it is very sad at, the state of some of the environments that these young people are brought up in and also fall into, and that we really have to try harder to provide better facilities and expertise around them to help them develop, I think. But anyway, I'll try and stay off my soapbox for today if I can, which can be difficult when you're talking about, I've got 2 little ones, 4 and 2, but SupplWell is kind of like the third child, and you hear that a lot, but it rings very true. And SupplWell for me, it for Asha, it came out of a little bit of boredom, or just kind of moving into a new challenge of how do you digitize something that you've already got, or that industry expertise. For myself, it kind of came out of necessity. It came out of a very low point in my life, sat on the kitchen table thinking, I don't know what to do. So as Naomi said, I was a teacher and a senior leader, and I ended up, I think this is a predisposition for teachers and educators and people who go into so-called vocational professions, is you have this inbuilt inability to say no to things. You just say yes because you want to help, and that's kind of where you sit and where you kind of feel that you add most value. So I ended up very quickly, over about 18 months of being an assistant head, just taking on too much, and it just, without going into the detail, it just wasn't sustainable at all. So at the end of 2018, after 2 relatively long absence and periods of absence out of the classroom, out of teaching in school, due to work-related stress and exhaustion, it was just enough. I couldn't do it. I'd been prescribed beta blockers, it was on ECGs and things like that, and a relatively fit and healthy individual, I won't say young man anymore. And I just thought, it's just making me sick physically and mentally. It just wasn't a good place for me. I had just the one small little one at the time, and my wife as well. And the role that I was doing in school, in charge of pastoral care in a very challenging environment up in North Liverpool, I struck up relationships with the supply teachers that were coming into the school. More often than not, there'd be a conversation with them at some point during the day where I'd have to go and intervene to say, please stay, don't go home at break or lunch. This is happening in the classroom, we'll square that out. And I just started thinking, when I was in school, how can I make that experience for those supply teachers better? The professionals, they've got the same qualifications that I have, they just have a different career choice. So I started meeting them at the start of the day, framing the day for them a little bit, taking students out where I knew they'd be problematic, and preempting issues before they became issues, really. And through those relationships, I discovered quite quickly that they were getting paid pittance. They were getting paid 60, 70, 75 pounds a day in some circumstances. So straight away I thought, well, that's not right, really, because they're coming in and doing a very tricky job. So I went down to chat to the bursar and had a conversation with her and said, what's a typical invoice look like for a supply teacher? 200, 250, 300 pounds sometimes. So straight away I thought, well, something's not adding up. What percentage of that goes to the teacher? The school didn't know, they were just receiving these big invoices. So when I was off, I thought, well, what are my options? I know I just going back into the classroom or into another school just wasn't an option. Couldn't do it. So I thought, well, if I could create a piece of technology and connect teachers and schools together, we cut out the need for that transaction to take place. be transparent with the school for what we charge, a small fee to keep the lights on, and we can put that money to the teacher. So we can save schools money, pay the teachers fairly, and we can keep money in the classroom. When I actually looked into it, I discovered in the Liverpool City region alone, there was £22 million spent over 5 academic terms on supply and recruitment costs, and up to 50% of that leaves the education system in fees. So we're looking at anywhere really, realistically, in the region between £7 and £11 million over 18 months, just out of the classrooms in our local area. I thought it's wrong, it has to stay in our classrooms. Nationally, you look at over £1.5 billion a year and up to 800 or 900 million pounds a year. And the figures are hazy because no one actually really knows, because there's no transparency. So I thought that money has to be better kept in the classroom. I don't know anything about technology and I don't know anything about business, but I just had an idea and I knew that there was something that I wanted to do. So that's where co-founders, for me personally, I lean on them more than anybody. One of them is my wife, and that can be very, very tricky, very tricky. But our other co-founder is Dan Price, who's absolutely fantastic and is more business savvy and kind of has that experience working in digital. He's worked in startups. He worked for Hootsuite, which he constantly reminds us of. So I lent on them very much in terms of, well, I didn't know what product market fit was. I didn't know what Series A or Series B was. All these terms, total addressable market, no clue whatsoever. What I did know, and what Asha mentioned before, was industry knowledge. I knew there was a problem, and I knew there was something that needed to be fixed. When I delved into it, I saw there were other people who were doing it to a degree in terms of what we were trying to achieve, but they didn't have a why. They just saw an opportunity, and that's why I knew we could do it better, and why we will, and why we will be successful ultimately. So that's kind of where it drove from. But beyond that, I knew I wanted to do more than just save schools money and pay teachers more ethically. And what I didn't want was I didn't want anybody to have to suffer the same kind of experiences that I did, because my absence and my leaving the profession was preventable, 100%. So I thought, well, if we can work with schools in a way to try and reduce that absence, schools are addicted to supply teachers. 2.2 million days a year are filled by supply teachers. They're addicted to them. But so much of that absence is preventable. The teachers are the most stressed, depressed, and anxious workforce that we have. And when I left at the end of 2018, I was one of 42,000 teachers that left the profession that year, which is just mind-boggling when you think about it. So in the midst of this recruitment, retention, and absence crisis within education, when I looked at what wellbeing support was in place for teachers, the market's just totally saturated, but none of it, from my experience and my market research, very little of it, should I say, because none of it is very sweeping, very little of it to me appeared to be rigorous or meaningful or scientific or medical. It was all kind of, well, should we put some Pilates into a school, or should we do some yoga? That's great, that's nice, but what is it actually addressing? How are you actually coming to the root cause of some of the issues that cause staff members to go off? So with that, we looked at creating an online digital health assessment, which we do in partnership with Champion Health, who is fantastic. And we created Teach Healthy. And what that does, it creates it's an online digital health assessment, and it assesses every aspect of a person's health and well-being, from hydration to sleep patterns, behavior, mental health, physical health, everything. And it gives the individual a personalized report that they can action, so they're fully aware of what they need, what area of their life do they need to be productive, to be healthy, both at home and at work. And for leadership teams, it gives them anonymized dashboards. And what that does, it enables, if you say to a head teacher, what percentage of your staff are stressed or anxious or depressed, they don't know. Well, would you like to know? Because we can help provide that information for you. Once you have that intuitive, meaningful data, you can inform your practice more effectively, and you can stop people going off. You can stop them reaching the edge of that cliff, and you can drag them back and really help. So that's kind of where we sat with it. The journey beyond that, it was kind of, once we got the idea of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to help schools, I knew that we needed just more consistency in the classroom. With greater consistency, that will impact on student outcomes and social mobility. If you've got a revolving door of teaching staff because you can't retain them, or there's so much absence, that will impact on the outcomes of the young people. So for me, it's more about social mobility. Yes, we put teachers into school, but there's so much more that goes beyond that. We just don't necessarily look to see, well, what is the actual impact of what we do? And if we talk about that more readily, yes, we've got ethical practices that we put in place, but how does that trickle down to the bottom line of the students' outcomes? And when I was off, if you look at the predicted outcomes of the students I was teaching versus what their actual outcomes were after I was off for 6 months, ultimately the people who suffered most was the young people, because they didn't achieve the grades that they should have got. And not that I was absolutely amazing or anything like that, because I was far from it, but I knew what they needed and had those key relationships with them and could guide them and coach them and help them through the situations that they were in. So that's kind of where SupplWell came from. We were very kind of fortunate that we got in touch with a chap called Johnny Clark, who is quite well known within Tech Nation. And he ran the Liverpool City Region Accelerator Program. And he was actually, and still is, very crucial in kind of guiding and mentoring us and coaching us through those early months and years, and still to this day. He was in the office today with us, actually. But he was very critical for us in terms of opening up networks and just giving us the local context of what is it like to run a tech business in Liverpool? What does that landscape look like? Who do you need to talk to? Who don't you need to talk to? Who's got your best interests? Who hasn't? And to have someone to kind of navigate those waters for you was really critical and really crucial. But he was very good at allowing us to talk to the wrong people if he thought that we'd get something from it in terms of a learning experience. Starting a business out of necessity is great, because you kind of just have to do it. There's no choice. And we put our first teacher into a school in March 2019, and I thought, well, that's it. That's great. We can do it. It's brilliant. I think we were ticking over around 3K a month or something like that. It was like, well, this is quite easy. We didn't put another teacher into a school for 2 months, to the point where I was thinking, we're going to have to just wrap this up. It's just not, I'm just going to have to find a way and go back in and try and teach again. And then fortunately, the phone just rang early July, and it literally just didn't stop. So it's kind of that perseverance and that kind of resilience not to give up as well when it does get tricky and you do think, do I have to, what am I going to do? But yeah, that can be quite difficult to kind of back yourself and not second guess yourself, and where you've got something and you really believe in your values and what's your purpose, can you actually make it work? And just kind of have that real drive just to think, okay, well, no, I can do it. I'll find a way to do it by hook or by crook. And yeah, it's tricky. It's hard. It's really hard. But you own it, which I think is, you see all these things about what's the difference between stress and passion and things like that. And believe me, that's true, but also not true, because the stresses are incredible. But it's very liberating. You learn so much. What I've learned, I'm 41, I think I am. So when you get past 40, just stop counting. That's my rule anyway. But what I've learned over the last 18 months, 2 years, I was a teacher for nearly 15 years. Not that I wasn't learning over that time period, but what I've learned now is just absolutely incredible. It really is. And for me, it's just really important to stop, pause, step back and think about, what have you done? What have I achieved? Are we where we want to be? Not necessarily, or yes, we are, but isn't that great? And have we really made haven't we done something terrific to get there? And I think if you can get lost in the woods a little bit with just like how kind of, stuck in the weeds with it and not take the time to appreciate what you've actually achieved. So it's, it's a great journey. I'd recommend anyone to give it a go if they've got a purpose and they think that they can solve a problem. And like you say, Naomi, like you said, if you've got the industry knowledge, you think you can go with it, I think that's absolutely critical. That knowledge, expertise and contact book is is great to kind of get you initially up and running, I think. So anyway, I've rambled long enough. That was kind of it. If anyone's got any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that. I think most people can, feel your passion through the screen. I certainly did when you were talking about that. And I would say probably 70% of my friendship group are in schools and teachers. And I've heard that so many times, how it's you go into something with the best intentions and it's just constantly breaking you down day by day. So thank you ever so much for doing something about it. So I'll definitely be sharing SupplWell with them. I picked up on the bit that you talked about your co-founders, and it's something that Naomi would probably have more knowledge than I would. But when companies and startups are looking to raise investment, I think investors are more likely to invest in a company that has co-founders rather than a single founder. Have you found that? You were very open about the fact that you didn't have the knowledge yourself.
Raising investment, we're literally, as you were talking, something popped up in Slack from, we're literally about to close on our seed round, and we've spoken to a lot of people, a lot of VCs, a lot of angels. Again, 2 years ago, I didn't know what a VC or an angel was. I knew what an angel was, but not in the context of kind of investment. I'd seen Dragon's Den, and that was kind of it. So from that point of view, I think you're right. I think the fact that they can see that there's industry. Hello, Kean. He's just talking. Okay. I think that you can see because there was three of us. I think that there's no single point of failure because there's three of us. So I've got knowledge from an education perspective. Raina has it from a recruitment perspective, and Dan has it from a marketing and the product perspective. So I think that can de-risk from the off a little bit, not completely, but it does give them a little bit of, solace in the fact that if you go off the rails or you can't cope or whatever the situation may be, that there's two other people there who can kind of lighten the load for you. And I think it's incredibly important to lean on those people as well at the right time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And as I say, Naomi will know more so than I will. I'm kind of just the host and in the face of this rather than any tech knowledge myself. But yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's something that we tell our founders at that very early stage, that they're very scared of sharing their ideas, and it's their passion. Is the person that they bring on board going to be as passionate about it as they are, and losing that kind of authenticity to your business. But right, I'm going to go to Des. Des has raised his hand, so hopefully Des will be able to unmute and ask a question.
It's actually Liz.
Oh.
Liz. Well, Liz and Des are sitting together, who are co-founders, husband and wife. So a lot of what was just said resonated with me. Hi, Michael. I wanted to pick up on what you said about the phone ringing. You had this first job that you supplied a teacher, and then there was a couple of months, you said, when the phone wasn't ringing, you didn't have any, you wondered if you were going to have to fold, and then the phone didn't stop ringing. So what made the difference, and why did the phone start ringing?
I've no idea, to be honest. I'd like to think that it was when we started it off, I literally just kind of contacted everybody who I'd talked with or had an interaction with whilst I was still working in education. And I'd like to think that I was reaping what I'd sowed, in the fact that whenever the phone would ring for me, and it was somebody like me doing what I'm doing now, when I was still teaching, I'd go to my office, the phone would be ringing. If it wasn't a parent that needed to call him back straight away, I wasn't listening to messages. I wasn't responding to emails that were coming in, because you're so focused on what did I need to do from the teaching perspective and for the kids. So I was ringing up school saying, the former assistant head let's talk to such and such. I wasn't talking to anybody. So I'd like to think that it was kind of just that endeavor of constantly just bashing by ex-colleagues and friends, and they've finally just caved and spoke to somebody else. But to tell you the truth, I don't know what it was. I'm just putting it down to just pure good luck and catching a break. And I think sometimes you just need that. I think what really helped, the school that ran was the school that we put the first teacher into. Now, because we were able to pay her essentially her day rate as in terms of her main scale pay, when we first had a conversation with her, she was literally applying for a job in Asda to stack shelves. Now, the lady who went into the school, she was an ex-middle leader, an ex-head of department who could teach further maths. So when she went into the school that we put her into, she was in a position where the teacher who she was covering for, she had so much more experience and subject knowledge than the outgoing teacher who was on maternity leave, that she was able to take intervention classes for Key Stage 5 students. She was able to add so much more value to the department. Now, I think because we were paying her fairly, she decided to take that role, whereas if we hadn't, she probably would have gone elsewhere. So I think the extra value that we added to the school, when they did have another absence, they came to us to get that filled. So a friend of mine said, you'll live and die by the first 5 teachers that you put into a school, and if they're good, the thing will work, and if they're not, it won't. And I think that very early on, the quality of what you produce, even if you only produce, a tenth of what you want to produce, I think you just have to make sure that the quality is as good as it possibly can be, because everything is reputation from the point of go.
Thank you, Michael. That was really helpful answer. I'm not in the teaching, I'm not in education, but I think there are principles that you can apply to any business venture, aren't there, that are fairly universal. And yeah, thank you.
No, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks, Michael. Really interesting, and love, like Steph said, love your passion, and wishing you all the success in the world going forward. Going to move on nice and swiftly to Sarah now. I'm worried about time because I know you've got an awesome story to share as well. So Sarah's, like I said at the start, calling in all the way from Norwich, which is a good far way away from Birmingham, and no motorway really to get us there. But thank you so much for joining us. I'll let you kind of introduce Developing Experts and what you've done. But essentially, Sarah is the founder of Developing Experts. Founded it in 2015. She has an MBE from the Queen's Honours List. Was it last year, the year before? So congrats on that, and I'll let you crack on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Naomi, and thank you, Asha and Michael, for your presentations. I'm a former head teacher, so I probably would have bitten your hand off, Michael, had I had your services on my doorstep at the time. So it's great to hear what you're both up to. I founded I came up with the idea of my business back in 2014. I was researching the education and employment market because I was in the process of setting up a free school for a multi-academy trust in Great Yarmouth. And what alarmed me was that for every hairdressing vacancy that existed, there were 10 kids locally qualified for that position. And yet for every level 2 engineering post, there wasn't a single kid with a level 2 engineering position to access that opportunity. And that was a post that was worth 3 times the salary of a hairdressing position. And I thought there's a real disconnect between what's being taught in the classroom and what opportunities are on the doorstep for families and for their children. And the biggest influencer in a child's future career choice is the parents. So unless you're engaging with parents and actually making sure that they're part of the decision-making process as well, you get a real curve or skew, because kids follow the favourite teachers and what they do, or the people in their lives and what they do, and they follow media. And so if you're not in that central ground, you're not able to influence the audience. So what I wanted to do is create a solution that joined together the silos that exist in society, join together the parents, the students, the pupils, the training pathway providers, governments and employers, in a way that enabled those different silos to come together in order to make sure that the sum of the good, or the whole was greater than the parts, and make sure that there was a strategic approach to growing future talent pipelines. So that was the driver. So what I did was create a science curriculum for children ages 4 to 16 years and a careers platform for the whole family. So I've got a couple of slides I'm going to talk you through just to help you visualize it a little bit. So hopefully you'll be able to see. So I'm going to skip right to this slide here because this one does it for me, really. So this slide here shows a grid, and if I think you can see it all right. But literally, there are 7 nuclear power stations in the UK. 6 of those are open and operational, and one of those is currently under construction, Hinkley Point C. If you look at the average age of the station managers and their age profiles, they're all 55 plus, following on from John's question. And so in a few years, 10 years time, the nuclear industry is in a state of crisis. It's the same for the rail industry. So looking at the average age of those station managers for the plants that are open, we know that the next station power manager, based on their average age profiles, is currently age 7, and they're in year 4 at school. So what we can do is product place the career messaging of nuclear or rail or energy or retail, whatever the sector is, within the curriculum to grow future talent pipelines in line with what industry needs. Career choice can no longer be left to chance, and it can't be left to teachers either, because they've already got enough on their plate. Having been ahead, having been a careers lead in a school, it's too much of an ask. Last year, we won the contract for the rail industry to build the careers and skills platform for the rail sector to grow their future talent pipeline. And if you look at the average age profile for rail, they're white, they're male, they're 53 years old. And at the moment, they've got to maintain an analog and digital system, and the digital side is just not coming through at all for that sector. It's the same for all of the sectors. So in 11 years' time, they are equally facing this massive precipice where they don't know where the talent is going to come from. There are 15,000 different job disciplines within the rail sector alone. And unless you actually dug under the bonnet of rail and really got familiar with it, there is no way even a rail employee could sell rail to you, because there's just too much out there. Before I did the Roots into Rail platform, I pretty much had the stereotypical idea of the industry. I knew about the fat controller from Thomas Tank days. I knew about the train driver. And so my understanding was so limited. So how can I, as a former teacher, sell that industry? How can a parent sell that industry? They can't. And so what we need to do, and what developing experts have set out to do, is create a solution where we're teaching the teachers, the parents and the pupils alongside each other to really deliver Gatsby Benchmark 4 in a way that everyone gets. For people who are not used to that jargon, Gatsby Benchmark 4 is basically how what you're being taught in the classroom relates to the world of work. That's what we do. And I'm going to stop sharing now because I think you get the concept. And so where we're at now as a company, we've raised £1.8 million worth of funding. We're on track to turn over UK sales between £1 and £2 million this year. We've then got revenues from China as well. We've been approached in the last month, it gets quite exciting, by 2 top 50 global brands wanting to buy us out. And we've also been approached by a top 5 global brand wanting to commission our software. So we're just at that juxtaposition where things could fly and get very interesting and exciting. We're cash strapped, we're growing on a shoestring, but we've got a really busy summer because we've just actually finalising quite a few big deals that mean that we go into serious growth mode over the next few months. So the team is expanding. In fact, we just advertised for 2 posts yesterday in order to try and manage the workload over the summer because it's getting interesting now. So that is my story in a nutshell. I could share so much more. I mean, last year we won an Innovate UK grant. COVID was our turning point. We're now in 5,500 schools. We have about 100 schools a week sign up. So we don't market, we have no marketing budget. That's just teachers selling our product to teachers saying, you must have this, because what we're doing is really meeting a need by making sure that we're addressing teacher workloads, making their life easier, but also actually providing a need and addressing a need for industry. So I hope that sums it up in a nutshell. Over to anyone on the floor for questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Sarah. That was I don't think I realised I knew half of that stuff, even though I was Rising Stars.
Well, actually, Naomi, it was thanks to Tech Nations that really you helped catapult us, because we won Rising Star in 2019. That was about a month before we were finalising the deal with the Chinese government. And had it not been for the momentum and the press that generated, that helped close the deal, if you like. Oh, but then as a result of your Tech Nations referral to say you must go on Google Startups, we were one of 10 companies last year that led to Google Startups. Had it not been for that, we wouldn't now have the former CEO of Google on our board and as my chief commercial operating officer. So one thing leads to another. So I read lots of what resonated, Michael was saying really resonated. I pushed for 5 years and our revenues have not been great at all. But this year ahead, we are actually in serious takeoff mode, and it would have been so easy to give up. Not that failure was an option, but you just have to keep going and going. And really, I mean, I've done 100-hour weeks, and you can tell that from the grey hair, for the past 5 odd years. And it's been a slog. It's not been easy at all. But now I'm thinking, yeah, retirement's not far away.
Absolutely brilliant what you're doing, and it comes up so often in a lot of conversations that I have in regards to the future pipeline of the tech sector. I myself work with some schools to try and get it to the young ones and the parents, like you say, so completely on board with it. So that's brilliant. I might get you to introduce you to my girls' school. But I do have a question. I know we've got a raised hand and we're on time, but I just have a quick question about how you've found, because I know that it's really hard to sell into schools. I know that from the amount of ed techs that I've helped in the past. Do you think that was because of your previous roles and your network that you were able to do that, or has there been other contributing factors?
My previous position helped to a certain extent, but before COVID, we were only in 250 schools. Wow. It wasn't until we made the product free to schools that we actually had takeoff. And it wasn't until we actually had mass buy-in, where a quarter of the schools in England are using the product, that then industry was persuaded that we had the audience that they wanted in order to influence. So we actually had a chicken and egg scenario. We had an exceptional product, but schools couldn't afford it. We made it free, schools wanted it, bought into it, became our evangelists, then industry wanted it. So we decided to pivot. In fact, John on the call was instrumental in helping me open the door for the industry, the energy sector, because we're just finalising a deal just before today to get Ministry of Defence and a few big brands like that over the line to come on board to use our solution to promote nuclear. So thanks, John. I don't know if that's your hand raised, but he was certainly a big moment or influencer in our journey.
Oh, thank you. Steph, do you know how to get Ahmed on to ask his question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Ahmed. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm a big fan of predictions and analysis. So what you said there regarding the power stations, trains, etc., you can use it anywhere. But I'm just gobsmacked that nobody's ever thought about where are the gaps in industry that have to be filled by pupils coming through schools. So when did you get the bright spark that could work?
Actually, 2014, I had a colleague at the time who went over to China to look at Shanghai maths before there were any maths hubs in the UK. And that was a delegation that went out with the Secretary of State with 20 odd heads and some Ofsted inspectors. When they came back, the former Secretary of State and one of the heads asked to meet with me because they knew I'd been in tech and knew I'd been a head teacher. And they said, look, can you come up with a solution? Because the Chinese government is looking for a solution that solves the problem schools face. And I hadn't thought about industry or skills at that point. But then I started with a blank sheet of paper. And I thought, right, if I was going to start again with the school education system and society, what is needed? That was the starting point. How can I change the global economy? It was big picture thinking. And so what I wanted to do is think, right, okay, if I was creating it for the Chinese government, what are their needs? They've got a £100 billion wind farm off the coast. At the moment, they actually have to plonk level 3 wind turbine technicians from one province to another province. They have no means of growing the talent, so local opportunity connects to local talent. They've got no means of tracking the talent coming through. So what our platform enables a government to do is essentially set, track and monitor the performance of each child, class, year group, school, and do it in a way where that data becomes anonymized for industry, so that industry can see the talent coming through. And if the talent is not coming through in the volumes it needs to come through, they can then increase the campaign messaging. Through our platform, we can actually do surveys. So we're like a Mori poll for skills as well. So if you want to actually analyze how much skill is coming through for construction, it's not enough, we can push and increase the message. We've got local authorities now that we are in the process of tendering for, and they're wanting to be able to actually transfer parents who were in retail who've got managerial skills over into construction or over into energy. What we can do is actually engage with the parents, find out what their skill set is, and actually take them on the journey through the platform in a way that enables them to actually utilise and transfer their skills. The offshore wind sector, they've got to create 276,000 jobs by 2030. 40% of those need to be BAME. Not only can we signpost that talent, we can enable industry employers to select based on BAME and diversity to address their needs away as well. So the platform is quite sophisticated now, does a whole ton of stuff, but it's all driven by data armoured.
I've been surprised every time I've come on one of these.
You cut out there.
Every month, there's always one, and the others are brilliant as well. But there's one that I think and thought, wow, that is just it's very simple. It's solving a problem, and it's also an easier way of looking at how to solve it as well. And I find that whenever I've done tech, if you fill those 3 buckets, look at something, filling a hole which is there, and it's easy to understand, it works. And I'm not a sycophant. I take my hat off to you. I really do.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Ahmed, and thank you to John and to Liz and Des for joining us and for your questions throughout. I've got a few slides to just share before we do round up for the evening. Let me just go back, and it follows on nicely actually from what Sarah was just saying. So Bruntwood are an official partner with Tech We Can, and with, I think it's 9 weeks left of the term in schools, and these guys are really pushing out their free learning resources that they've got to try and help get more children into the tech industry. So I know here in the Midlands, we've got half term starting next week. So many of you, I presume, have been teachers for the last 18 months and will look at this and think, why have we not heard of this over the last, 18 months? But please do check out what they've got going on the website there at the bottom, techwecan.org. They've got some free online lessons. They've got creative challenges for your little ones. I think the age range that they're basing on is 8 to 14. So like Sarah was saying, maybe just after that 7-year-old where they're, we really need to start them off young and try and get them thinking about the industries that the different types of technology that they can go into future potential careers. So please do check out the techwecan.org website. And then there's just 2 events that I wanted to kind of bring to your attention as well that we've got coming up in the next week. So on Friday, Dan Corcoran, he started off as a Tech Wednesday speaker, and we now work with him every fortnight. He delivers a startup growth clinic for us. And this week he's bringing along a VIP guest, which is Paul Yeomans, and he is a extremely talented, impressive career. He was in charge of the innovation for UK division of a 196 million turnover events company. They're the guys who do all the music behind the X Factor and huge concerts. So a really cool guy. He's previously also been an MD of an IT services business, which grew to 30 million turnover under his leadership. So yeah, please feel free to join us on Friday afternoon. It's always a really engaging session. Everybody gets a chance to talk and ask questions, and obviously Paul's we're really grateful to have him with us. And then next week we are welcoming back CyberQ. So CyberQ were a speaker last month. Chris gave us 10 minutes overview of the dark web and these threat actors, and I was absolutely terrified about all the things that go on there, and I went away thinking that people were going to hack me. But next week we're having a 1-hour session with him. So if you liked what he was having to say last week, please do join us on Tuesday, where we're going to delve a bit deeper into the world of cybersecurity. But that's all I need to give you, really. Thank you ever so much, Naomi, for hosting us this evening. It's been great to have you back. As some of you may know, Naomi used to work with me, and she actually was my predecessor and did Tech Wednesday before she handed the baton over. So thank you ever so much, Nay. And also, obviously, those programs that she spoke about at the beginning, you can check out now. As she said, I've got the slides if you want any more information on any of them, and she's also popped her Calendly link in the chat, so please do follow up with her if you're interested. A massive thank you to you 3, to Asha, Mike and Sarah, for your inspiring stories. It's great having you. You know, the good thing about this virtual world is that we're able to pull people in from all around the UK, so it wasn't possible previously, and thank you ever so much. John asked in the chat whether this session has been recorded. It has, and I can share that afterwards. I'll do a post-event mailer tomorrow to everybody, and you'll have access to that. I'm sure the guys will be more than happy for you to follow up with them if you have any further questions, or if you'd like to get in touch with them. You can see the chat box going off, so hopefully it's all good things and thankings. That's us for this evening. We've gone slightly over, but hopefully you don't mind. I can smell my dinner cooking in the kitchen, so everybody's tummies are getting a bit unsettled. But thank you ever so much. If you'd like to speak at a future Tech Wednesday, please do email me. My email address is there on the screen, or even if you've just got any feedback that you'd like to raise, then my inbox is always open. Anybody got any closing remarks? Nay?
Thank you, Steph, for organising once again. And yeah, thank you guys for sharing your stories. Thank you, really, really great.
Lovely. I can see John and Ahmed have raised their hands, but without everybody jumping in and speaking all over each other, I'm going to hopefully round us up. But thank you ever so much. If you do have anything that you'd like to put in the chat box before we do, I'll keep that open for a little while. But thank you ever so much, and enjoy your evenings, everyone.